just had a change in plan. I'm going to talk from right here.
You're what?
I'm going to talk from right here instead of
Okay.
behind this thing.
All right, good afternoon and welcome everyone. It is my pleasure to, I'm just following direction here. Right?
So you step back a little bit, speakers right above you, sometimes kick.
All right, there we go. It is my pleasure. As some of you know, well, first, my name is Jane Allen, and I am the person who has the title of CEO of the Entrepreneur Center, but the reality is just working every day to hopefully make a positive impact in our entrepreneurial community. But when I started 1 year ago, I started calling people and asking if they would meet with me, and one of the people I called was Joe Scarlett. And I had read an article he had written in the Nashville Business Journal. And I was really inspired by the article, and so I asked Joe if he would meet with me, and he was agreeable. And it was one of the most pleasant meetings. I was so inspired, and at the same time, somewhat in awe. So the fact that Joe said yes when we asked him to come and speak today just really thrilled me. And at the same time, this is sort of the first live speaker that we at the EC have had, and this was Joe's idea. So our hybrid, virtual, in-person event, socially distanced. So thank you to Tina and the team for making sure we could all be socially distant in here, and then also making sure we have people that are able to participate virtually. So Joe, as some, if not all of you know, is definitely someone in our community that is a part of our tapestry, in that he was the CEO of Tractor Supply, and he came into Tractor Supply, and I'm going to let him tell his story versus me telling it, but I'm just going to say he helped build the foundation of what Tractor Supply is today, and most of you know Tractor Supply is doing very, very well during the pandemic. And so he also, again, writes for the Business Journal, provides information. He cares about education deeply. And so I admire the fact that Joe keeps giving, and he keeps giving of his time and his wisdom so that those of us can continue to learn. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Scarlett. So thank you.
Jane, thank you very much. That was a wonderful introduction. I appreciate all those kind words. I'm going to, well, first of all, as you know, I'm retired, but I'm retired in 2007 from Tractor Supply Company after nearly 30 years there. I do an awful lot of interesting things today. Jane mentioned, I write for the Nashville Business Journal. I do some speeches from time to time. I do a lot of coaching. We ran a leadership institute for several years. I'm involved with our daughter in our family foundation, with our son in his hotel company. And we used to travel a lot, but that ended back in March. And most importantly, I do whatever my wife tells me to do. So you guys know where it's all about. What I want to do today is I want to talk to you in sort of three different chunks. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and Tractor Supply Company, and then I'm going to spend a lot of time talking to you about the two key factors that have made Tractor Supply successful. And from those two key factors, you should be able to pick up a lot of things that would help you as an entrepreneur, help you in your business. And then time permitting, I'll share with you 10 or 12 tips about leadership. I'm very passionate about leadership, and I've spent many, many years studying leadership and working with other leaders. It was interesting, I was telling Jane earlier, we were talking about leadership and learning things, and in my last 15 years in business, I learned more from networking with my peers than I did actually studying things and doing things. And when you learn from your peers, it's amazing what you can learn. I was on the board of the Retail Industry Leaders Association. I was actually chairman for several years. And that's Target and Walmart and Best Buy and Home Depot and little tiny Tractor Supply and a total of about 30 companies. And when you rub shoulders with the CEOs of businesses like that and talk to them all the time, you can benchmark yourself. And it's interesting, I would sometimes be talking with some CEO and I'm thinking to myself, you know something? We're a little tiny Tractor Supply, but we're running circles around that company in this particular category or in that particular category. And in addition, when you make associations like that with your peers, it's amazing how many good friends you make that stick with you for a long, long time. In any case, we've lived here in Nashville for just about 40 years now, 41 years actually, and we love this city. But I grew up in New Jersey. I had a nice upbringing, had a great mom and dad, and from the very beginning, if I wanted money, go out and get a job, go to work. And when I was a young kid, I was shoveling snow and raking leaves and mowing lawns and delivering newspapers, and later on went to work in several grocery stores, and sort of, that was the way we lived. The one really tremendous advantage I had growing up is that my dad worked on Wall Street, and he would go into New York City every day, and he would do his stuff, including once or twice a week listening to CEOs speak about their businesses. And of course, the CEOs were trying to influence the investors to buy their stock. But he would come home at night, and we'd sit around the dining room table, and he would tell stories about the people he'd met and what he saw, and he'd talk about the business strategies. So I was forever listening to how companies were run. And one of the things that he was adamant about, he would often talk about the character of the people he had met and listened to. And it was usually very positive and very good, but he would not invest in a company where he felt bad about the character of the executive. And I remember one time it was a real estate company, and this fellow came to talk, and my dad came home that night, and he said, "I don't trust that son of a gun." And about 2 years later, he got arrested, and I can't remember what all happened, but it turned into a disaster. So his judgment about character really made a difference. I went to work for a discount store chain in New Jersey after school. It was a great company at the time. It was growing, and I was learning, and I learned a lot of lessons about what to do. I learned some lessons about what not to do. Early on, I was in charge of the checkouts in a discount store. The store was closed. I had about 20 employees. And at that time, we had to restock the paper bags and empty the trash and sweep the floors and check out the cash drawers and all these jobs to get done. And I thought, well, I got everybody working. I think, well, I'll just pitch in and help load the paper bags just to get out earlier so I can get drinking my beer 30 seconds earlier. and I'm doing this for about 5 minutes, and this big paw lines up, grabs me by the shoulder and drags me back into the ladies' coat department. Never forget the man, Vic Grosso. He's a store manager, big old grizzly guy, and he'd been around for a long time. And he said, "Joe, look down there at checkout number 20. What do you say?" 3 or 4 kids just sitting on people who work for us, sitting down on the counter just talking to each other, not doing anything bad, but they're not working. And he said, "If I wanted you to stock paper bags, we'd pay you half what we're paying you. Your job is to manage the process. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of yourself as an orchestra leader. When you're in a management job, you're like an orchestra leader. You've got to get all these different musicians to play all these different instruments to produce a good tune. It's the same job in management. You've got to get all these employees to work together to do their jobs to produce a good result." And that put me down on a path to delegation. And I became, from that point forward, a pretty good delegator, and I would tell you that being comfortable delegating, which is not always easy, being comfortable delegating is one of the keys to making it to the higher levels in management and leadership in any business. I learned a lesson early on, and it worked to my advantage. By the way, anytime you want to ask me a question, just raise your hand or bebop on the Zoom machine, however that works. And if my kids are there, don't ask any embarrassing questions. I was working for the discount store chain. I was in an operational role. I was running operations in a store. I was supervising the operations units in other stores. And I was the youngest guy among these operations supervisors, so I got the stores that were furthest away. And I quickly learned that if I want to avoid driving through the night to go somewhere to fix some problem, I better make sure I've got good people in place. And that became a passion of mine from very early on in business, making sure that you surround yourself with the very best possible people. I spent a tremendous amount of effort on always hiring the best, training, developing. You don't want to have to drive 5 hours during the night to go solve a problem somewhere. You want to know that Mary Jones, who's in place, has been trained well, is competent, and can solve the issues. And over time, the more of that you do, the more successful I became. I was in operations with the company for 13 years in a number of interesting roles and challenging roles. And then all of a sudden, in my 13th year, the chairman of the board came in one afternoon. He said, "Joe, I just fired that guy running our personnel department. I want you to become a personnel manager, personnel director, Monday morning." And what do I know about personnel? I had some common sense, but I didn't know much about it. But it was a heck of a challenge, and I jumped into it, and I learned a lot awful fast, most of it inside the company, but some outside the company. And I know that kind of a change scares a lot of people, and I guess it probably scared me at the time too. But, oh, that sounded like my phone. It really turned out to be a tremendous opportunity, because all of a sudden I knew how to run stores, I knew the operations of stores. Now I was learning how to be a personnel officer, and it was a tremendous learning experience, and the kind of thing that I would encourage anybody in business who has an opportunity to make a big jump like that, go ahead and take it, because it can pay off for you in learning skills that you wouldn't otherwise have. I did that for 2 years, and the company I was with was not doing well. We at one time was a fabulous company, and things were going sideways. Our leadership was weak. There was a tremendous amount of lack of ethics and sometimes outright dishonesty. A lot of nepotism, which can really erode companies, particularly big companies. And in the senior management group, there was one person that those of us at the mid-level thought, if this fella could ever take over running the business, we'd be absolutely on cloud nine. Well, he finally left, and he went somewhere else, and a few years later, his name was Bernie Marcus. Does anybody know who Bernie Marcus is? Founder of Home Depot. So if he had stayed in our company, we could be Home Depot. Who knows where we'd be today? But he left, and so I left also shortly after that. In 1979, I joined Tractor Supply Company in Chicago in one of the worst snowstorms they ever had. The snow was about 10 feet tall on both sides of the street. It was like being in Iceland or something. But a quick synopsis of Tractor Supply's history to that point. Founded in 1938 in Chicago by a man named Charles Schmidt, and the business was originally going to be selling tractor parts, mail order. A year later, they opened the first retail store in North Dakota, and from then on, it was really a retail business. Mr. Schmidt, although I never met him, he did quite a nice job building the company. And sometime in the 1950s, the company went public. Apparently, the stock did very well. In 1969, Mr. Schmidt decided that was it for him. He was going to retire. He moved to Florida. Apparently made another fortune in real estate in Florida. And the company was acquired by a much larger company. So Tractor Supply then was a subsidiary along with 10 other subsidiaries of a big company. And during the next 10 years, between 69 and 79, the company went through 4 different CEOs and an awful lot of issues of one sort or another, looking for a strategy, looking for a business that would really effectively move the company forward, and that did not happen. And then in a year and a half after I joined the company in '79, I helped move the company from Chicago to Nashville. I joined in March. We were here operationally by the end of August of 1979 and have been here ever since in 4 different locations today. As time went along in 1980, it became clear that the company was doing very badly. And although I liked the fellow who was running it, he just really didn't have a business strategy to make things work. So at the end of 1980, the company had done $100 million in sales and lost $13 million. If we hadn't been part of another company, that probably would have been the end of the organization. he was replaced by the parent company. They brought in another fellow named Tom Hennessy. Tom came in as a caretaker to run the business for a couple of months while they found another president. Tom liked the business. I pitched in and helped him. We worked together carefully, closely, and then after about 2 months, he decided, hey, he loved this business. And he went back to the parent company, and he said, I'd like to be CEO of Tractor Supply. And he presented them with a business plan, and they said, okay, you got it. He came back to Nashville. He sat down with me, not the other officers, but just me. He sat down with me, and he said, Joe, here's the table of organization. I'm the CEO, and here's how we're going to run the business. He said, Tom Hennessy, I'm going to run merchandising, operations, and real estate, and we're creating a new position of senior vice president to take care of IT, logistics, accounting, personnel. And I thought to myself, I'm looking at that saying, where are they going to find this dude? And he turned around and looked at me and said, Joe, that's your job. So that was the biggest business surprise of my life. I went from just one of a bunch of vice presidents to number 2 in the company in a complete surprise. And then all of a sudden I had to learn, what did I know about data? They called it data processing in those days for those old timers. And what did I know about that? I went to school to learn about IBM. I went to accounting school to learn about accounting, and wound up managing all these parts of the company. It's another one of those experiences. You get thrown into something you don't expect, and you get in there. You got to swim, and sometimes you can swim and be very successful. It worked out very well for me. It prepared me for managing most any part of the company. So Tom and I worked together very closely. We had a bunch of other folks with us. We're moving down the road. Things are getting better. We're doing a better job at selecting merchandise and operating stores. And then during this time, Tom and I and the others, we spent lots of time in the stores, and we were talking to store people, we were talking to salespeople and customers and studying what's going on. And one of the things we didn't see a lot of in the stores were farmers. Didn't see a lot of farmers at all. A couple, but not many. And so we're looking at what's going on, and what we saw in the parking lot were all pickup trucks. And then we had a lot of data. We were able to study the data, and as we're looking at what's selling, almost everything having to do with production agriculture was not selling well. But all these other products were selling well. Things like riding lawnmowers and air compressors and generators and truck toolboxes and men's work clothing and pet food and animal feed and anything to do with horses and all these things that were sort of related to farming but not in a production world. And then in addition to that, we did something that's being done continually to this day. We assembled a manager's advisory board. We got about a dozen of our best managers and invited them to come in for a couple of days and talk about the business and how it's going. And we sat in a conference room, and at first nobody wanted to say anything because the bosses were there asking the questions. And so I finally said, all right, folks, we're taking notes, but we're not taking names. Say whatever you want to say. We're going to forget who said it, but we're going to listen to you. And we spent 2 days just talking about every aspect of the business. And Tom and I and the other senior people were learning so much about what really is going on in the business. And you couple that with our time in the stores and studying the numbers and listening to these folks, we realized that we were not headed down the right path, and we began to shift to a different path. And it changed how we thought about the business, and we realized that farmers is not what we want to be focusing on. We want to be focusing on all these other customers. And we went about beginning to transform the business. That's year number 1 with Tom Hennessy. At the end of that year, the parent company came to us and they said, boys, we love you, but you're for sale. So here we are, 1 year as a management team, not even a year, and our company's for sale. So we spent all of 1982 trying to sell ourselves and other people trying to sell us, but nothing came to fruition until about November, when 3 guys from New York City, John, Joel, and Bill, who had a little company called Monmouth Capital, hooked up with us, and we got together. We worked out a deal to do what's called a leveraged buyout. Myself and my 4 partners, we put up eensy amounts of money, comparatively speaking, but these three guys from New York put up a lot of money. We bought the company on a shoestring at the beginning of 1983, and we were beginning to, the company was headed the right direction at this point. And so we had these three partners from New York, and they'd come in for a board meeting, and there'd be, five of us and three of them, and we'd sit around the table talking. Now, the inside story here is that two of these three guys from New York were also the folks that financed and ran the Woodstock Rock Festival. So our board meeting was an hour talking about the business and 3 hours listening to stories about the Woodstock Rock Festival. And we worked together with them for 3 years. I'm still friends with those guys today, 40 years later, and they walked away tripling their money in 3 years, and we wound up owning the company. That's one of those financial transactions where everybody wins, and we went forward from there. That's in the early 80s. I want to share a couple of stories with you that I think might fit into the kinds of things that you all are probably dealing with. About 1990, when I was already president and almost the CEO, I decided there was time that we tried to pull everybody together in the organization. The organization was growing, and we hadn't really done anything like this before. So I just delivered a talk at the beginning of that year about the vision for the future of the company. And I delivered it to virtually every management group in the company. And it was about an hour long, and it was talking about what we're going to do in operations and merchandising and marketing and logistics and technology and all the rest of these things. And at the end of it, I surprised everybody by saying we're going to double the size of the company in the next 5 years, which apparently shocked a lot of people because they weren't used to fast growth. But as we went forward after that conversation, all of a sudden Mary is talking with Charlie over here, and they're beginning to work together because they didn't know exactly where everybody else was going. And I brought it all together, and you could just see people working together, and you'd see, oh, by the way, I did such and such. I realized the importance of simply making sure everybody knows where you're going. And I delivered that talk and versions of it until the day I left the company. And I found it so important when people know where they're going. It's amazing how they can help you get there. And if they don't know where you're going, you don't know what they're going to do. So that was one of those, and that's something that you can do in any business. Even if you have 5 employees, if people know where they're going, it's amazing what they can do. Another story about never being shy. Late 90s, we're doing well, we're growing, the business is doing well. We went public in 94, and things are looking pretty good. And then all of a sudden we hear a rumor through the grapevine. Walmart is going to open a farm store. At this point, Walmart's a humongous company. We're a little tiny company. And then a couple of weeks later, Walmart's going to open 100 farm stores. A week later, Walmart's going to open 1,000 farm stores. So we could stick our head in the sand, or we could, any number of things we could do. What I did is I called down to Bentonville, Arkansas, and I asked to speak to David Glass. David Glass was the CEO of Walmart who followed Sam Walton. So I figured he's certainly not going to answer the phone. I'd be lucky if anybody answers the phone. So I got David Glass, please. Hi, David Glass here. He answered the phone himself. And I said, my name is Joe Scarlett. Hi, Joe, how you doing? He knew who I was, which I found amazing. So I said, I'm a little concerned about you guys getting into the farm store business. Oh, don't worry about that. He said, hey, Joe, why don't you come on down, let's have a talk. So, I got, as fast as I could, I got my butt moving to Bentonville and with one of my partners, and we spent about an hour and a half with David Glass talking about retailing and world affairs and all kinds of things. And he finally said to me, he said, I finally got around to finding out what they're doing in the farm store business. And they said, we just want to learn, see if we can pick up a few products that we can knock off from your channel and to put into the Sam's Clubs. And he said, don't worry, there'll never be more than one store. So, that was good. In the meantime, by the way, our stock had plummeted. based on the rumors. So we're following this store in Kirksville, Missouri, and we're in there regularly seeing what they're doing. And they were doing a terrible job, and they'd selected the wrong merchandise, and they had it priced wrong, and they had bad help. Everything was wrong with the thing. So less than a year later, I called down and spoke to another person I knew there in the real estate department. I said, I know how bad that store is doing. I'll make you a deal. I'll lease back half the building. They were in an old Walmart building. I'll lease back half the building for you and pay market rates, and I'll buy your inventory at your cost. And I know we're getting screwed, but I'll do it anyway. And we did. We had a deal before the day was over. They said, you got a deal. And by the time, about 2.5 months later, I was able to go to Wall Street and say, we took Walmart out of the farm store business. It was an interesting coup. And once we started saying that, the stock went back up again. I guess the lesson there for everybody is don't put your head in the sand. When things look bad, get out and do something. I'm a great advocate of cold calling people. You have nothing to lose, and it's amazing what you learn. When I was on the road, I would often call a competitor and say, hey, even if I didn't know them, I said, tell them who I am. Of course, they usually knew who I was. And I said, we're going to be in Mattoon, Illinois next Tuesday afternoon or so. Can we get together and have a cup of coffee? Thrilled. And you can make all sorts of relationships like that sometimes can help you. You could have common problems with a supplier, for example, or you could have some common issues with some commodity products or maybe some regulations or something where you can work together. And it's kind of a no-lose situation. In some cases, you make some good friends out of it. Another little second Walmart story that have worked out very well for us. As Walmart moved from their traditional stores to supercenters, they had all these old buildings around. They had to do something with them. And we leased a slice of one of the buildings in Farmington, Missouri, and it worked out very well. We got in there, we got the right size building, we got the outside lot which we wanted, and the rent was really relatively low compared to new construction. And so we said, well, what about another one? We did one in Cookeville, Tennessee, and then finally we developed this good relationship with Walmart. And today Tractor Supply leases hundreds and hundreds of Walmart buildings, old Walmarts where they take a part of the building that has the outside lot. And Walmart came to us at one point and they said, back about 2000, said, we want to open a lot of supercenters in Florida, and we got all these buildings are going to be available. Would you like them? And we didn't have any stores in Florida, but they offered us, I think, a dozen buildings. And so we said, well, we'll take a gamble, and we did. We leased, I think, a dozen buildings and had 12 grand openings the same day, and our market in Florida took off from day one, and it's always been a supermarket for us. So if we hadn't had that hadn't had that relationship with Walmart, that might not have happened. So Tractor Supply today, give you a little status. 40 years ago when I started, there were about 40 competitors in the marketplace, and mostly all family owned. Tractor Supply was one of the larger ones, but not the largest. Today, Tractor Supply has 3 times more stores than the next 5 competitors put together, and that number is probably pretty low. We started with 100 stores in 1980. There are now 1,900 stores, and I've been invited to the grand opening of the 2000th store sometime next year. Nobody knows where it'll be, but the revenues were $100 million. The revenues this year will be $9 billion. We went public in 1994. If any of you were sharp enough to buy a share of stock in 1994 at $20, today you'd have 16 shares at 140, worth about a little over $2,000. It would have been a good investment, and I did. And finally, and I think of interest here, is that the company's had 5 CEOs over the last 40 years. And if you work for the company, you would know that there are different personalities and different names and so on, but you know you work for the same company because it's been a very consistent culture, a consistent process, and there have not been big surprises, and there haven't been big jogs in different directions. The company stayed pretty well focused. Next, I'm going to talk about the two major success factors that propelled Tractor Supply forward. But let me stop first, and I've been talking nonstop here, and nobody's asked any questions, although some of you have laughed at a few of my jokes, which is really cool. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You talked about kind of the importance of hiring good people and how much you learned being a personnel officer. Can you kind of dive a little bit deeper into like how you would measure, hiring someone on the team, how you kind of make that decision of whether or not they're good people?
Well,
Hey, Joe, can you repeat that question?
the question is, I'm supposed to remember that. The question is about good people. How do you know when you're getting good people? Well, the answer to that is you don't always know you're getting good people, but you have to do everything possible to try and get to the right people. I can tell you one particular story. We were having trouble with turnover of store managers at one point. And so we did one of these things. All right, let's close the door. Let's get the personnel files in here for our 20 best store managers. And 3 or 4 or 5 of us are going to brainstorm for however long it takes to figure out what's the formula for a good store manager. And we developed a whole profile. And the profile is something like this. Grew up on a farm or ranch or has some connection with the rural lifestyle, likes people, outgoing, likes animals, is mechanically inclined, has probably been out of school for several years and got their nose bloodied at least once. And there's some other things too. There's a whole profile, but you got the idea. We had a profile, and if we get 80% of that profile, we're almost guaranteed that we're going to have a successful manager. And of course, then there's all this business about it. You got to learn how to interview right. You got to do background checks. You got to make sure you're getting what you think you're getting. One of the things that we do regularly at our annual, semi-annual managers meetings, we're always doing classes and interviewing and performance evaluation to keep our managers sharp when it comes to the whole recruiting and the whole interviewing process. Answer your question? Yes, ma'am.
So I'm a big student of self-development. So during this process of taking this company where you're taking it, what was your self-development and professional development?
The question is, as we grew, how did I go about developing myself? Do we have 3 hours? I was always learning one way or another. I was reading, I'll tell you one interesting story. In, I don't remember what year it was, in the early 1980s, one of the fellows that worked for us in the accounting department brought me a book review about a book called In Search of Excellence. For those of you old folks in the room, you probably remember that. That was a revolutionary book about business in the early 1980s. And it's at a time when we thought the Japanese industrial machine was going to rule the world economically, and most Americans were thinking, well, we're never going to catch up with them. And this book was a study about excellence in American business. And here's how John Deere does it well, and here's how so-and-so. And it was a study of excellence in business. And that was one of those learning tools. I wouldn't say I had a clear learning path all along, but I was forever reading wherever it made sense. I did learn that once I read the first book from this author, it was great. The second book was nothing but more of the first book. So one of the things that read a book about something's interesting, but don't a whole series of books from that same person. I was talking about networking before. Networking is a big, big part of it. Learning from other people, and just one of the pieces of advice I give people all the time is, don't go to lunch with the same people you go to lunch with every day, because you're not learning anything. Go to lunch with different people. If you're just call other people. Say, hey, I work for a tractor supply company. I'm interested in learning about how you go to market with such and such, and I read about you somewhere, and I heard about you. Would you like to have lunch? I'll be happy to buy. Most people are thrilled that you're interested, and it's amazing what you can learn from talking to people like that. Most of my learning was on the job. I didn't have a formalized program. Okay, I'll move on now and talk about the two key success factors in Tractor Supply. One is a business strategy that really works, and one is a culture that provides the background, the grounding for doing everything we do. I talked about the company being in trouble in the 1970s, and the issues were that the number of farms in America has been contracting for a century. The repairing tractors is no longer, they're big, expensive pieces of equipment, and people are not repairing their own tractors. It was very clear that production agriculture was going somewhere else. And we zeroed in and looked at all the things that were going on, which I described to you earlier. We're studying our numbers and studying our people, and we moved to the point where we are going to market to a new customer that we called a hobby farmer. Hobby farmer, I'll define that for you. A hobby farmer is typically a family that owns an acre or 2 or 3 or 10 or 15 or maybe more, typically a full family unit, above average income. They can be doctors or lawyers or factory workers or from anywhere. The commonality is that the rural lifestyle, they like that rural lifestyle. They spend their weekends mowing the lawn and fixing the fences and monkeying around with their old tractor and feeding the chickens and whatever else they do in this rural lifestyle. And so we moved away from marketing to farmers to marketing to hobby farmers. And once we got down that path, that became, we were going hell-bent for election, marketing to hobby farmers. Now, that changed virtually everything about the company. It changed the locations of stores. No longer do you want to put a store in the farm fields of Iowa. You want to put them in areas where you have lots of this kind of customer, a la Williamson County, for example. Anywhere around a city like this where you have large numbers of people that have limited acreage and are not dependent on agriculture for a living. It changed the products we carry, changed it dramatically. You move toward more and more assortment of the kinds of products that this customer really wants. I'll tell you two examples that we're really proud of. Tractor Supply is the largest retailer of animal feed in the country. Tractor Supply is the largest retailer of propane in the country. These are just things that people use in rural areas, and we go after that customer and that product. It changes advertising, changes who you advertise to and what you advertise. It changes the hours you're open. No more closing at 5 o'clock, no more being closed on Sunday. It changes who you hire. You don't want a bunch of 60-year-old farmers hanging around the store anymore. You want people who are your customers. And by the way, that's interesting. We hire our customers. That's what we really want to do, hire our customers. We love people that own horses, by the way, because horses are big animals and they eat a lot of feed. And I've become convinced over the years that horse owners will actually spend more money on their horses than they do on their kids. So we focus on hiring. Well, if you look at who owns horses, they're typically young women are involved in horses. So we try to have 2 young women in each store working opposite hours so that they're there and can bond with other people that come in and are involved in an equine set. So changing this strategy away from farmers to hobby farmers changed the dynamics of the company. It changed virtually everything we're doing. So that's success factor number 1. Success factor number 2 is building a culture based on always doing the right thing no matter what. We do the right thing with our employees in every respect. We do the right thing with our customers in every respect, and we build very strong relationships with our business partners who are, in our business, primarily our merchandise suppliers. We have a very clear mission and values, and we're very focused on it. It's, of course, it's on the walls and in the handbooks and all the rest of it. But it's more than that. It's in our hearts, and then we learned a while ago we can put it in our pockets and carry it around with us too. And our missions on one side, our values on the other side. I have copies for all of you here afterwards, and I'll leave some with Jane here afterwards. I want to just quote a few things from our mission and values to give you an idea of what it's all about. Our mission starts off to work hard, have fun, and make money. We work hard. We got a great work ethic, like we hope everybody does. And the kind of business we're located in and where we're located, almost all of your employees have a great work ethic to begin with. The second part is to have fun. Now, not too many companies that have fun in the second 2 words in their mission statement, but we believe that's very important. Nearly 90% of our team members are customer facing. And when you have customers, you don't want sourpusses in the stores. You want people who are having fun, who have a good attitude about life. So we do everything we can to create a fun, positive, and upbeat environment. And the third part is to make money. Work hard, have fun, and make money. Make money, obviously, is about the company making money. But more directly, everybody in the company is on a bonus incentive plan of one sort or another. And at the store level, the one that's most common, every employee in the store has an opportunity to earn a bonus every month. And it's based on how the store does as a total. So if the store makes sales plan, we take 1/2 of 1% of the sales for that month, put in a bonus pool, it's paid out proportionally a couple of weeks later. So every month you got a new goal, and every month you have the opportunity to earn a couple extra days' pay. And it creates teamwork. You know, if we're all in the same, we're all in the store together and we're working together and you see me out goofing off, you're going to get all over my case. Go back to work, sell some more stuff. Or if you see me struggling in trying to sell something, you're going to walk over and say, hey, Joe, let me help you with that. But by having a team bonus like this, it builds a teamwork environment. People work together. On the other side of the card are 10 values that we live by. Ethics is number one. We do the right thing no matter what, all the time. That's as simple as that. Going down the line, we have respect. The third value is balance, which you don't often hear from many businesses, but we want our people to live a balanced life. And it's not just being a nice guy. When our managers, particular managers, are balanced and they work hard, they do a good job, but they also have time for their family and time to take their vacation and time to go to the kids' ball game, they are a balanced person. And what happens when you have balanced people like that, they stay with you. But when you have a workaholic who's working 70 or 80 hours a week, may produce tremendous results for a short period of time, but I guarantee they're not going to be with you 2 years from now or 3 years from now. So it's very much a part of what we do. And we're very focused on teamwork and change and initiative and so on. So anyway, I will share these with you later on, and we're very, very proud of them and put them out all over the place. It's almost like a recruiting tool. Actually, it is a recruiting tool. Ethics. Always do the right thing. Tractor Supply has, relative to other retailers, has a very, very low degree of inventory shrinkage, very low degree of dishonesty. And there's one particular story that I'll never forget about ethics and about honesty in the business. We had a young buyer named Lisa, very aggressive, very, very smart, and she was buying animal health products. And she had a couple, 500 different items she's buying, and she's studying her numbers, and all of a sudden she comes out, holy cow. She looked at the iodine sales. Iodine is used somehow in dairy production, and don't ask me how, and it's in very small quantities, but it's a sort of an essential component that you have to be in our business. But we don't sell a lot of it. And she saw this one store that's selling like 5 or 10 times as much as any other store. And she said, wow, what an opportunity. So she went to the store to try and figure out what's going on. What she found is that iodine is also used in the production of methamphetamine. And so what did she do? She didn't go talk to anybody. She knew it was the right thing to do to get rid of it. She got together with the manufacturer and the scientists. They found a comparable product to be used in dairy production, but it can't be used in making methamphetamine, and she simply replaced it through the whole company and never said anything. It was so ingrained in her to do the right thing, she just went about and did it. And once we found out about it, we gave her a big pat on the back and made a big deal out of it and so on, because it's such a great example of doing the right thing. But that kind of attitude pervades the company. We believe in educating our people. We believe in leadership education. We believe in working hard to develop the right kinds of people. Back to what you were talking about earlier. We have an entry-level management development program primarily for store managers. We have a mid-level development program, and then we have an executive program. I'll just run through a little bit of an example of the store managers program. If you meet the profile we talked about earlier, and you join the program, you can only be trained in about some number of stores where the store manager's been certified to teach. And then you have a workbook, and you go through learning all this stuff, and sometimes, depending on your background, could be anywhere from 4 months to 12 months. And then before you can actually take over a store, you have to come into Nashville and you have to go through a class. Actually, it's Brentwood these days. I mean, the class lasts all week long, and it's all about the softer skills in business, and it's taught primarily by senior executives. I used to spend 8 or 10 hours a week with that group every time it came in. And it's about how to build teams, how to hire good people, how to conduct interviews, how to get along in the community, how to celebrate success in your store, how to teach people in your store. All these softer skills in business taught mostly by the senior executives, and every night you go out to dinner with somebody different, and then you leave on Friday. You've met everybody in the company. You've had a chance to ask every question you ever thought of, and you go on from there to run your store, and whether it's around the corner or 2,000 miles away, you never have to look over your shoulder. You know what the company's all about. You know what's expected of you. Once store managers are in the store, they're empowered to run their business. If they have to ask a technical question, that's fine, but they shouldn't have to be asking management leadership questions, because we've tried to give them every possible bit of knowledge in that regard. We would talk about empowering our managers, empowering our people to run the stores. When you're in a Tractor Supply store, you won't notice this, except when I'm pointing it out to you. There are signs that hang down from the ceiling. One of them says satisfaction guaranteed. And underneath that are the words that say, every team member has the authority to do whatever it takes. So if you work for the company, you look up there and say, wow, I can do whatever it takes for a customer. And we do. And you got a customer problem, you do whatever it takes for the customer. We teach that the customer, our relationship with the customer is a lifetime relationship, not a transaction relationship. And we know that we have some rough ideas of how much people will spend with us over their lifetime. If you own a horse, we love people that own horses. During the lifetime of a typical horse, if you're one of our customers, you'll spend more than $20,000 with us on that horse. And of course, if you get half a dozen horses, we love you even more. So we look at lifetime values. We have what used to be called a headquarters down in Brentwood. Well, we renamed it a long time ago the Store Support Center. And people there, their job is to help the stores do well. And it's everybody there spends some time working in stores. And if you're in a store and you're working there and you unload a truck and you stock the shelves and you sell something to the customer and you operate the terminal for a little while, when you do that, you have some idea what it's all about. And then you will make decisions centrally that may be different than you might have otherwise. And then when you're in the Store Support Center and you do something great to help a store, we're going to celebrate that. We're going to make you feel really, really good about it.
We do have a couple questions coming through online as well, so I can ask if now's a good time.
Fire away.
Okay, so we have, how would you compare your management style to that of the current CEO of Tractor Supply?
Who put that question? I say that like that because I spent 3 or 4 hours with him. Okay. How would I compare my style with the style of the current CEO of Tractor Supply, who just joined the company in January or February? His name is Hal Lawton, and I've gotten to know him pretty well, and he's a really good guy, and I would say his style and my style are very similar, and I spent 3 hours with him last week in the Grassland store to get to know him even better. So I think we're both on the same page.
And one other, we have a couple. Biggest high and biggest challenge while CEO at Tractor Supply. Biggest high and the biggest challenge.
The biggest high and the biggest, the question is, what was the biggest high and the biggest challenge? Well, the biggest challenges are always people challenges. The toughest decisions, the most important decisions you make are the selection of the people you surround yourself with. And certainly the things I'm most proud of are the people I was able to help to hire, develop, bring along, promote. That's where you get your biggest high. And of course, your biggest low is when you fail at that. And that happens. Sometimes we make mistakes hiring people, and the lesson there that I wish I could reverse everything, but we all, human nature is, don't worry, I'll work with her. We'll make her go. We keep on working with people when we know it's a lost cause, and we should move on. Which reminds me of another story about that, exactly that kind of thing. We had an employee working in our accounting department many years ago, and he had very good skills, but he had a terrible attitude. And we tolerated his lousy attitude because he had certain skills. And he also had some things going on up here that aren't probably not right. And we got served with a shareholder derivative lawsuit accusing us of, in effect, of cooking the books. And this fellow had been with us for 2 years, and he in his mind thought that we got behind a screen somewhere and figured out what we wanted to report for earnings and went about doing that to play with the stock price, which was completely untrue. And we then had to spend something like $2 million in forensic accountants and lawyers. It never even showed up in court because we had never done anything wrong, and we proved that without a doubt. We proved it to ourselves because nobody else was around. But it was a clear example of how we had somebody with a bad attitude. We knew it, and we tolerated it. We should not have. More?
And then, are there any more on the, I guess we can ask Sam if there are any more.
Zoomers?
People are shy on Zoom.
Dr. Smith, that I think is an important one, but I can read it. It says, thank you for this presentation. Due to my professional background, I follow. Oh, wait. Is this Monica? Monica, do you feel comfortable to pop on and ask? Just to give context, maybe?
Can you see me?
Hey, oh, there you are. Hey. Yeah, I'll let you ask your question.
Yes. Thank you so much for this presentation, which I've been taking like copious notes on. This is a little different from what I do. I am the founder of Polly Ann's Tea Cakes. And tea cakes, if you're not familiar, were created by women who were once enslaved on southern plantations. This recipe has been passed down in my family for generations. And so I started the business through the EC's work. That guided me. But anyway, before that, I had a whole career in higher education, diversity and inclusion, and due to that background, I kind of keep up with those kind of appointments. Realized that TSC appointed its first such person that had some other responsibilities, if I recall correctly, last year. Given what you said about the importance of networking, getting those surprise opportunities early in your career, and making those other kinds of connections, I'm wondering what maybe say 2 pieces of advice you would give to someone like me, a Black woman who is seeking to expand her funding as well as her retail outlets there in the Nashville area, when oftentimes I'm interacting with people who don't look like me, who then may make some, preliminary decisions about my trustworthiness or my capabilities just based upon me being different.
I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question other than just be aggressive about it. I often think to myself, you hear all these issues about race today, and I tell you, business people like me, we just want you to we want everybody to be successful. And I would just urge you to get whoever you need to talk to whoever you need to, I gotta look this way, talk to whoever you need to talk to, and just take the bull by the horns and run with it. And don't assume that the fact that your skin is a different color that people think differently about you. That may have been true, 50 years ago, but I think that is true very, very small part of the time today. Just take the initiative. I talked about cold calling before. Cold call. I've seen a lot of people do that, and I have a number of African American friends a couple of whom have just cold called me out of nowhere and said, "Hey, can we talk?" Because I do a lot of coaching.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome.
I'm a week away from getting my authority. I just started the trucking company. Does Tractor Supply work with independent trucking companies to do direct, or do y'all guys just only focus on what you are?
I'm not working there anymore, but I can tell you, when I first joined the company, we had the highest priced drivers in America. Our predecessors, management there, had gotten us under the Teamsters Master Freight contract, where we were paying huge amounts of money. In the early years, we farmed out the transportation to contract companies who do all of they drive the trucks. That the trucks may say Tractor Supply on them, but the trucks and the drivers all belong to another company. I'm not sure whether this is true today, but UPS was our number one operator of trucking. Exactly what they do, I don't know. So I just.
I have a question.
Yes.
I read an article that you wrote, I think it was in BJ, about trusting your instinct. So what advice do you have for first-time founders who, you're entering this new adventure and journey? What is your advice about trusting your instinct?
Well, the older you are, the more you should trust your instincts. So if you're 18 years old, I would don't trust too much your instincts because you might get in trouble. But as we grow, we learn things. We have experiences, and some of that's down inside of us, and sometimes we can't express them, but those feelings are there. Sometimes with people, sometimes people are just, you're talking to somebody, I don't trust that person, and you don't know why. But there's something about what that person's doing. You may or may not be right, but if you have bad feelings like that, move on to interview the next person. That's a very sort of a vague topic because it's hard to define exactly what trust your instincts means. But the older you are, and the more interactions you've had with other kinds of people and businesses and whatnot, the more those instincts are built inside you, and the more likely you can just trust your instincts to do things.
Sort of similarly, I have this interview that it looks like you did in 2010 in front of me, where you talk about how there's no place for ego in leadership. And I was wondering what you would say to new entrepreneurs who have a very specific vision of what they want to do, and balancing that vision they have with taking advice and learning lessons from others, rather than continuing straight forward on the path they have in mind.
The question has to do with, say that again,
Sort of balancing your own vision and desire to go ahead with what you have, with taking lessons from others.
Okay.
And put your ego sort of on the back burner.
The question has to do with ego and vision. Share the vision with your people repeatedly and listen. Listen. Don't let your ego get in the way. Some people sometimes they're so positive that's where they want to go. They don't listen to anybody around them. Well, you ain't all that smart. When you got 5 people around you, the total IQ in that group belongs to the other 4, not you. So you listen to everybody around you. I see business leaders sometimes that got an ego as big as all outdoors, and they're not listening to their people, and they turn out to be failures. And that's pretty common. So you've got to be engaged and listening all the time.
So I attended a conference this weekend and was dealing with some business leaders and entrepreneurs as well. And one of the things they discussed was that your customer is the expert. And your experience with retail and maybe some other companies you deal with the service industry, what's been your experience with giving up or having that mindset that your customer is the expert?
The question is, should you believe that your customer is the expert? That might depend on what business you're in. If it comes to repairing a rocket ship, I would certainly be listening to the experts. In our business, for the most part, our customer generally knows as much or more than the salespeople in the store, and we tend to listen to those. And if there's a difference of opinion, most of the time there's an available way to solve that problem, to go back and get the facts. I know that doesn't exactly answer the question, but I'm not in that business where I've dealt with that kind of issue. Yes.
How did you know to bring your business to Nashville when you moved here from Chicago?
How did I know to bring the business here from Nashville? I didn't. My predecessor, whom I worked for, had made that decision based on the parent company, which was in Atlanta, and we had a regional office here. And he'd lived in Southern Virginia, and he loved the South. And so he picked Nashville, and I am so glad we did. But it's interesting, we brought down a lot of people from Chicago with us, but most of them went back. They didn't like all us hillbillies down here. So, are we going to 1 o'clock or 1:30? 1:30, okay.
So I got a question. If you have team members at a high level, if you guys disagree on certain things, what's any suggestions for conflict management or resolution?
Suggestions for conflict management or resolution. Talk it out, listen, don't take a solid position, sleep on it. Generally speaking, reasonable people can come to an agreement on issues. Don't lose your cool. Keep talking, generally speaking, you can reach a resolution. But in fact, if you are the boss, eventually the boss has got to make a decision. I talked earlier about the importance of delegation in my life. And I can tell you, when it comes to decision making, I can tell you proudly that I made very few decisions as a CEO, very few. I made high-level personnel decisions with the input of my team. I made high-level strategic decisions with the input of my team. And I like to figure out where we're going for lunch. But mostly you push decision making down to where it belongs. So, more questions? I've covered a lot about here about the culture of the company. We simply are focused on doing the right thing all the time. I work very hard on over-communication. I think that leaders need to over-communicate the values of the organization and the mission and the direction. We think that, once you've said it, the people know it, but that's not true. People have to hear it over and over again. It's just like raising kids. You got to say things over and over again. The experts will tell you that we retain 10% of what we hear a week later. So it's about continually reinforcing that kind of thing. So the two major factors in Tractor Supply success is the strategy of focusing on hobby farmers, away from regular farming, and the power of having a first-class, high-impact culture, which we have and continue to have today. And I encourage you to, when you go in a Tractor Supply store, and I hope you all are customers or will be, and just feel free to speak to any employee about how is it working at Tractor Supply? How do you like it? How's the company treating you? I think you'll find that you hear an awful lot of good things. I want to share 10 thoughts with you about leadership. I've been studying leadership and teaching leadership for probably 50 years or whatever. So I got 10 thoughts here for you. If you're taking notes, you get 10 opportunities here. 1, never compromise your principles. Always do the right thing, no matter what anybody says. Always do the right thing. And if you're unsure, talk to somebody. Go see them. I give probably the most blatant example of not doing the right thing is Volkswagen. It's a couple of years old now, but Volkswagen lied and cheated about their emissions. And they lied and cheated here and in Europe and all over the world. And the engineers in that company were simply not telling the truth. And they knew they weren't telling the truth. And the CEO and the senior management may or may not have been complicit, but it's unimportant. The leadership in that company did not create a culture that did the right thing. They did not create the culture. Therefore, people at lower levels felt it was okay to do bad stuff. So never compromise your principles, and wherever you are, talk about them. Don't let anybody who's working for you ever misunderstand what's right and what's expected. Second, and we've covered this several times, but surround yourself with great people. Like I said earlier, the most important decisions we ever make in business are the selection of the people we surround ourselves with. And I've made some bad decisions, I made some good decisions, and we all will. And as I think I also said before, the difficulty is not facing those decisions. We need to, when we know we made a mistake, do something about it. And we know we have good people, help them get ahead. I told you I was down at the Grassland Tractor Supply store last week. One of the fellows who was there with us is Lynn Craig. Lynn Craig, I first met in the Columbus, Nebraska store probably 30 years ago or 25 years ago, when he was a 22-year-old kid with a ponytail. I don't know how he got into our store with a ponytail, but he did. And we wound up talking with him, and we went, this is a bright kid. And he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do in life, and he's driving a motorcycle. And we chatted with him for a while and realized he's a really smart kid. So we said, well, you ought to think about applying to be an assistant manager. He did. He became an assistant manager, a district manager, a higher level district manager, a regional manager, and now he's a senior vice president of the company. And if we hadn't talked to him and encouraged him, that might not have happened. So wherever you see promising people, help them get ahead, and they will not forget you for it. The most important personnel decision you ever make is the selection of. Who said that? You get an A. The selection of a spouse. And I'm proud to tell you that I made that selection on an airplane a little over 50 years ago. And we just celebrated our 50th anniversary in June. So,
Wait, did you meet on an airplane or did you propose on an airplane?
we met on an airplane. I was sitting down in the seat, and this pretty young girl came and sat down next to me. And she had a British accent, and we flew to the next stop in a plane, and she got off and went somewhere else, and we hooked up later on and got married. So, but that's, we talk about hiring. The most important decision you ever make are people decisions in business, but it's also personal life. It's even more important. Third, and we talked about this earlier too, set clear direction. People who work for you should never be confused. They should know exactly where they're going and have input into it too. You're going down the road, they should not be confused. They should be able to, you should be able to discuss it. They should be able to know where you're going. And if there are differences of opinion, you need to talk them out. That's number 3. Number 4, delegate, delegate, delegate. When you're in a leadership role, if you're doing the work, you don't have time to look over the hill and around the corner, which is what leaders are supposed to do. Now, I recognize some of you running, if you've got a 2-people company, it's a little difficult not to do a lot of work, but just keep whatever you can do to lift yourself out of the details gives you the ability to be able to think and look into the distance and provide good direction for your organization. Number 5, build a teamwork environment. Now, we can talk about that for a long time because there's so many things that go into that. Listening, of course, is one I didn't talk about my typical work week. Whatever that is. This has to do with team building. My typical work week in the 30 years I was with Tractor Supply, about half of my work weeks went something like this. I left town on Monday. I took with me a regional vice president, typically responsible for 150 stores. Typically, I took one other promising person with us. It could be a buyer or a HR person or somebody from logistics or from technology or from accounting, some promising young person that I wanted to do something to help move along. And we'd get on the company airplane. We got a whole fleet of them. They're all blue. They all say Southwest. We'd fly off somewhere, and we'd hook up with a district manager, and we'd go out to dinner with the district manager and maybe the district manager's spouse, and we'd get, set things in motion. And the next morning, we'd go off to a store. We'd spend 2 or 3 hours in the store, and then we'd go to another store and another store, and we'd do 2 or 3, maybe 4 a day, and we'd talk to every team member in every store, and we'd listen to everything that's on their mind, and we'd talk to every customer. And I know what some are probably thinking, well, here comes the CEO, nobody's going to talk to the CEO. Well, you can let that happen or not let it happen. In my case, I didn't let it happen. Somebody say, hello, Mr. Scarlett. I'd say, the name's Joe. What's your name? Mary? Mary, what part of the store do you take care of? The pet food? Come on, let's take a walk. How's this new pet food selling? 2 minutes into this conversation, we're best buddies. And then you just keep learning and learning and learning and learning. It's listening and listening and listening. So we do that, we do that for 3 days, and then Thursday night we fly back home, and we'd be full of knowledge and full of ideas, and we will have left every store with them feeling good about themselves, because our job going out there is simply to support and listen and do whatever we can to make those stores successful. Teamwork. Celebrating every success. So the simplest way to motivate people in the world is to pat people on the back. If somebody does a good job, say, "Nice job today, Mary." Just pat them on the back. It doesn't take anything to do. It's the simplest thing in the world. Every time somebody does something really big, celebrate. Find some way to celebrate. I know when our stores make sales plan, it's very often that they'll find some way to celebrate. Do high fives with each other. And we used to encourage them to get pizza, but people are eating so much these days that probably find better ways to do things rather than eating. But building teamwork is a continual process, and you've got to be thinking about it all the time. When you screw up as leaders, and we all do it one time or another, pretending like it didn't happen is just kidding yourself. If you screw up, you just stand up and say, "Hey, I made a bad decision here. We shouldn't have done this. We should be doing this." But because your people know you screwed up, so don't try and look the other way. Just say it and apologize. And when you're in a leadership role and you do something that's not right and you apologize for it, you earn respect of the people working for you. Number 6, and we talked about this earlier a little bit too, but develop your knowledge base. Keep learning all the time. And there are different ways to do that in different businesses. I talked to you about the importance of networking, the importance of cold calling, the importance of reading. By the way, if you're interested in the books I read, go to my website, joescarlett.com. Just keep learning. Do whatever it makes sense for you to do in your business. And if you're not sure, ask your boss, ask somebody around you. What would be the best thing for me to do to learn more about what we're doing? If you work for me, one of the things I always say is what is your learning agenda? And if you look at me with a blank stare, I say, wait a minute, we need to talk about this. Everybody needs to be learning. Even I'm older than anybody in the room here, I would bet. And I'm still learning all the time. I'm continually networking with people. I'm reading, I'm counseling, I'm always on a learning mode. Number 7, develop your communication skills. I used to be terrified to stand up in front of a group like this and talk, and most of you probably are, or many of you probably are anyway. It's a skill that's important in business, and the further you go up the ladder, the more important it is. So I urge you to take every opportunity you have to speak in front of a group. I know it's terrifying, but just a little bit, the more you do of it, the better you get at it. It's like any other skill in life. Develop your writing skills. If you don't write well, get a coach who can help you. I write those columns for the Business Journal, but I'm a okay writer, but I'm not a great writer. But I have 2 coaches. I have a cousin out in Colorado who writes for magazines, and I just send them out to her, and she sends them back to me with a bill. And then I have somebody here in town who does the same thing too. But when you get in your leadership role, your ability to communicate is so tremendously important. Speaking in public, listening, writing, all those things. It's an essential part of leadership. Number 8, and some of you may disagree with this, but your image counts. Your image counts. What you look like counts. When you meet somebody, if you stick your hand out and smile and shake hands, that's a plus for you. If you're like this, you're sending a different message. And if you dress like a slob, people think of you as a slob. If you dress like professionally, although we're not doing much of that these days, but look the part. The fellow who runs Twitter, anybody seen him on television recently? Looks like he climbed out from under a rock somewhere. He's not doing any good for himself that way, because people immediately think less of somebody like that. One more personal image thing for you, and I'm kind of a nut on this topic, but you all have a voicemail greeting, or should have a voicemail greeting on your phone, right? How many, I won't take a survey, but I'll bet you half of you are letting it go to some mechanical message that says, so-and-so's not here. Put a personal message on there. Sell yourself. Somebody calls you, they want to hear you. If you called me today, you'd say, you'd hear something to the effect like, "Hi, this is Joe Scarlett. It's Thanksgiving week. I'm busy going out and fighting a turkey. Leave me a message. I'll call you back later on." Do something that shows your personality. I change it every month, sometimes more frequently. That you're projecting an image. Sometimes I call people, I get one of these mechanical messages. I think, have I really gotten that person? You don't even know if you got the person or not. So I challenge every one of you in here and up there to change that greeting at least once a month. Show your personality. You all got personality, so show it off. Okay, these the next two are a little bit different. Number 9, take time to really think. I'll tell you what I've done. Here's what you do. 2-3 times a year, get yourself a notepad, go somewhere without your phone, drive somewhere. I used to drive out to Percy Priest Dam and just park the car and just sit back and close my eyes. And I went through a cycle of 3 thoughts. 1, how am I doing in my job? How am I doing in my job? What do I need to do differently? What have I not thought about? Next year in January, what's coming up? Have I thought about this? Do I need to worry about so-and-so? I know that Mary's husband's about to get transferred to Chicago. Do I need to think about a replacement? You just think about all the things that are going on in your job and your, how am I doing? And then wake up, open your eyes, and then write some notes down. Right, here's what I think I should do. Here's what I think I should do. I think you should do that. Step 2, close your eyes again. Put your head back and think about your career. How am I doing in my career? Am I where I want to be? Do I want to go further? What are my thoughts for getting there? What is the next step? Do I want to take a next step? Do I have a plan? And maybe you do, and maybe you don't. And maybe the plan is, I need to talk to my boss. I need to figure out what the next step is. I need to figure out what books to read or what classes to take or what people to associate with. Develop a plan. If you think you're going to be transferred to another city, make sure your family knows about it. Make sure they agree with you too. Just think about your career and put together a plan. The fact you're doing something today doesn't mean you always have to be doing the same thing. You can go further, or maybe not. Maybe you're happy where you are. And the third part of this is sit back and think about, do the same thing again after you make your notes. Close your eyes and think about all the things with your life personally. Am I doing what I need to be doing? Have I been nice to my spouse? Have I seen my brother who lives 200 miles away? Am I doing what I need to do? And in each of these 3 exercises, I bet you'll write down some notes in each one, and you may change a few things about your life for the better. So take the time to do those kinds of things. Yes, ma'am.
Now that you're retired, what are you spending your time on?
Were you reading my notes? I was about to. The closing notes here are: if you want to live to be long, live long and be healthy. Their genes can affect you, but mostly, if you want to live long and be healthy, you need to do 2 things. You need to keep your body active. You need to exercise, and get the right physical and eat the right food and all that kind of thing. And just you got to keep your blood flowing, because if you're going to sit back on the couch and eat potato chips, you ain't going to be around too long. That's one. And the second, and equally important, is you got to keep your mind active. I'm 77 years old, and I'm here talking for an hour and 20 minutes to a group. I could just as easily be laying on a beach, drinking a pina colada and getting fat, but I'm not. Although my wife would say I'm getting fat, but anyway. In any case, I'm thrilled to be able to share this with you. It's the first talk I've given in a year, and because we've been locked up for so long. So I'd be happy to take questions or say adios, whatever you'd like. Questions from the peanut gallery? Yes, sir. Joe.
Take time to think was 9. What was 10?
Oh, 10 was the final thoughts about exercise and keeping your mind active.
What
Yeah.
do you spend your time on now?
Oh, what do I spend my time on? I do all sorts of different things. I can do whatever I want to do. I coach people. I do some talks. I write some articles. I spend time helping coaching not so much. I spend time with my daughter who runs our foundation, although she knows more than I do now. I spend time coaching our son he and two of his partners run hotels. I'm always doing stuff. I got various and sundry conference calls that pop up from time to time. I'm on the board of the Beacon Center. I do whatever Jane Allen tells me to do. Huh? Thank you all very much.
Again, I just want to thank you so much. I appreciate the fact that it's hard to believe it's been a year since you spoke in front of a public group, and you have so much knowledge and wisdom. And I'm a living example. I cold called him, and he met with me.
Yeah.
And again, it's that continuous learning. And so again, I learned so much in that time with him, and I'm glad and appreciate he's here today to share with you all. So thank you again, and on behalf of the EC, we are so appreciative.
I'll be around if anybody wants to talk some more.
Thank you.
Thank you all.